All right, well, let's talk to Dr. Duncan Robertson about this. He's a policy and strategy analytics academic at Loughborough University. Good morning to you, Duncan.
Morning, Julia.
Well, first of all, do you think that Dido Harding should go, or do you think that actually the person in charge of the process isn't actually the problem?
Well, I think the whole system's misconstrued. And I think, it's been set up as though it's sort of trying to sell, mobile phone upgrades, whereas in fact, it's a very skilled thing that needs to be done. And that's where the expertise needs to come in. These are the people who are in local authorities and in Public Health England. They should be the ones running the test and trace system because they are the experts.
Yeah,
And if it's going to be
I don't know why, but it's never occurred to me that people running local councils are experts in test and trace. I've yet to find anyone in my local council who's an expert in anything. If you've ever dealt with a planning application, for goodness sake, or getting your bins collected, why do we think that local councils have this expertise?
because they have the statutory authority. I mean, they are the
Doesn't mean
people
they've
who
got
are responsible.
expertise.
Well, that's why they call on Public Health England, who have epidemiologists and people who do this as a
Why
living,
do you need an epidemiologist to track and trace somebody?
because you need to know how the disease is spreading. And of course, what's happened with test and trace is we've lost that. The whole idea was to come out of the national lockdown and to have this whack-a-mole strategy. And as part of that, we need to know where these outbreaks are taking place. And of course, I think 2 months ago, 23rd of August, the testing capacity was breached. And so we just don't have that intelligence about where these outbreaks are. We can see when it all goes completely out of control, but all around the country, the R rate is greater than 1, and therefore it's spreading out of control, and we need to stop that.
Well, it's not spreading out of control because we can see from the infection rate and we can see from hospitalisations and deaths that we've actually got a slowing rise, which suggests it's not spreading out of control, which suggests the R rate isn't much greater than 1. And certainly in some parts of the country, Devon and Cornwall, it certainly isn't.
Well, this is the point. It depends how you look at the R rate. You can look at it in terms of the whole world, or you can look at it in
Well,
terms of the
exactly.
country,
Or
or
in
you can
terms
look
of
at it
local
in.
towns.
You can, absolutely. So it may be that in my town, I'm lucky and I might not have students, for example, who aren't seeding the infection, in which case it might be relatively low. But what happens is this disease spreads, and it spreads to towns and cities that don't have it. And the point is that this epidemic as a whole is growing. Some places are obviously behind and some places are ahead. So if you look at the R rate in, say, universities, it has been probably higher than the natural rate.
Yeah.
And what's happening is it is spreading, getting out of control, and will.
It's not out of control. I just don't understand why people just glibly make these statements. You only have to look at the graphs. You only have to look at the data to know it's not out of control.
Absolutely. And that's
But you just said
exactly
it
the data
was.
that's not reliable, because the whole point is we've lost control of testing.
No,
So
no,
the
no, forget
numbers.
testing. Well, look, testing is fairly
No, that's
meaningless.
the graph,
No,
right?
no,
Julia?
no,
I
no,
mean, that's
that's
the
not the
graph.
only graph. Hospitalisations, triage at 999 and 111, and people actually going into ICU. Those graphs are also showing no exponential growth.
So they are showing growth.
They're
And
showing
of
growth,
course,
but
if
that's
you.
not out of control. Most
Right.
ICUs in this country are at no higher capacity. Some of them are even at lower capacity than they would normally be at this time of year.
So what we know from looking at surveys is the R rate across the country. I'm just looking at the latest figures, between 1.2 and 1.4. That means it's doubling about every 2 weeks. And of course, we can wait for 2 weeks and to see that it has got out of control, or we can be proactive and actually try and get ahead of this. And it seems as though quite a lot of the strategy has been set from, I don't know what government's doing, but sort of looking at focus groups and looking at what should be done. And it's not really taking a strategic role. It's all very tactical. All these local tier 3 lockdowns, it's great headlines. I keep getting updates on my phone. But there are 315 local authorities in this country. And that's, 315 headlines. But of course, what are we doing strategically? This strategic bit isn't really there.
Well, what would be a strategic approach then?
Well, it depends what you want as your objective. And that's the thing we don't really know from the government. So, the government should be saying what we want to happen, and then we should set a policy to do that. And, it strikes me as the one strategy would be, or one objective would be, to minimize the amount of deaths. It may not be.
Minimise the amount of deaths from COVID or minimise the amount of deaths overall? Well, I mean, we don't have excess deaths at the moment, so we've already done that.
We have had excess deaths, absolutely.
We don't have excess deaths at the moment. We had
We
excess
have
deaths
had
in
excess
March and
deaths,
April.
absolutely. And the thing is that, obviously, as people go into hospital, as ICU beds are taken up, then other people aren't able to get the hospital treatment. And of course, other people do die. So, it's kind of set up as this battle between lockdown and the economy. But actually, if you look at it, rather than people fighting each other in those two camps, those two things go together. So get the virus under control, the economy comes back, and everything is under control. And at the moment, it's not.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Duncan Robertson, Policy and Strategy Analytics Academic at Loughborough University.